Okay, welcome to our Torah study today, the post-Thanksgiving Torah study. And we're going to be in Genesis 37, but I want to backtrack just a little bit because this story of Judah is very, very important. Judah and Tamar, really for the building of the leadership of Judah. And so we have yet to see whether Jacob, despite his success with his family and success in surviving, we have yet to see whether he... Now, we've read the story, but again, I always encourage you, and shalom to everybody on Facebook Live and YouTube. We're on YouTube as well, I might add. So subscribe to that. And it will be good for everybody, right? Okay? So make sure you subscribe to the YouTube channel. The Canaanites, other groups in the area must not be considered barbaric from the perspective of culture. These are highly developed civilizations with a self-determination to continue and to succeed as well. And then the question is Jacob going to be able to compete in this particular arena, being somewhat of a nomad and not really having a place except for the cave where Abraham and Sarah and Isaac and so forth, Rebecca, are buried. So there is this competition, there's this question, and Dinah and her story appears out of nowhere, and then the question arises, why is that story there? It's a gruesome tale. And but it succeeds in doing a couple of things in Genesis chapter 34. Jacob moves towards the city of Shechem, and Shechem is supposed to be an offshoot of Shalom. It's a place that is going to be noted for violence, and so he moves towards the city. He deliberately encamps before the city et Pnei Ha'ir. So he wants some of the comfort of the city, and so he's going to sacrifice some safety of the weaker vessels of the family by being that close to a pagan city who has a different set of moral values. Welcome back. You came back to warm weather. It's all comparative, all right? Okay, so he does not return to Bethel. He does not return to the place of his dreams. He turns, in fact, to the city of the Canaanites, and there's all kinds of danger there. And he purchased some land. He erects an altar. El Yisrael, the God of Israel, is there. But what will happen? What will happen? Dinah, the daughter of Leah, whom she bore, this is 34:1. Again, I'm backtracking. This is not the parashah. The parashah really begins in 37. But this story is so important to us in terms of Judah. Judah is going to be the key. We think it's Joseph, and Joseph, in fact, is a key player. There's no question about it. Very important to the story. But Judah, without Judah, very little is going to get done. But Judah is not ready. So we have this story here. Leah, the daughter of Leah, whom she bore unto Jacob, went out to see the daughters of the land. Bivenot ha'ar, right? It's Dinah, it's not her brothers, who first leaves Jacob's safety. And she goes on alone, and no one is there to watch her. Isn't that remarkable? You've got all these sons, and you've got Jacob, and you've got people who are hired for the animals and the field, and no one takes note of this daring escapade towards Shechem. She wants to see how the other women live. She's curious about the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, right? I mean, it's akin to that. So she wanders out youngest child of Leah. Notice it's the child of Leah, not the child of Jacob. There's some indication of the connection, if you will, of Jacob to women. He exalts the sons. His hope hangs on the sons. Sons inherit. But nobody is watching Leah. And here is a Hebrew speaker. And Dinah, you know what Dinah? Dinah is from din, judgment. Right? And there's going to be judgment upon Jacob and judgment upon Shechem, we're going to see there. She's probably about 13 years old and curious. And 13 was a marriageable age, right? Here's this foreigners are called the daughters of the earth, and she's curious about them. She's curious about their way of living, about their speech, about everything. All right, so she's going there. She wants to understand, but that's not the first time, isn't it, that someone saw what was the delight of their eyes. Right? It just seems like that tree always crops up, the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, always seems to crop up, and someone reaches out alone, unattended, right, unprotected, and touches that tree, right? So she wants to look upon, which means she wants to make some friendships. She wants some girlfriends, right? So she reaches out specifically for that. Leah's daughter is the one who goes out. Leah went out in chapter 30, verse 16, didn't she? She's the one that went out. Her daughter follows that adventurous spot in the women of the family. Leah and Dinah, Dinah, her daughter. So if there's blame here, it's got to go to Jacob, who is not watching out, right? And he hasn't taught his sons to watch out. And so she wanders out. Nobody's taking care of her, and so we know the story. But let's just go on. She wanders out, and in verse 2, it's 34:2, and saw her. Shechem, the son of Hamor the Hivite, saw her, the prince of the land, and he took her. And he laid with her. That is, he abased her. Okay? And obviously, this is a throwback to the pre-Noahic times where the Gibborim, the warrior class, if you will, would take women at their leisure. It would just be whatever. He's a prince of the land. He's going to take whatever it is that he wishes. Stealing women is not unusual in the ancient world. So now what's going to happen? And the father commands Shechem to do it. Take this girl, right? This Yalda, this young girl, for a wife, for an Isha, right? And so his father says, we've got to make this right. This is going to cause us problems. Now Jacob, verses 5 and 6, heard that he had defiled Dinah, his daughter, and the sons were with his cattle in the field. And Jacob held his peace until he came. What would we do, you think? We might rant and rave, okay? But he's going to, we're among people who could slaughter us. Let's just hold our peace. And Hamor, the father of Shechem, went out unto Jacob to speak with him. All right, so Jacob is biding his time, right, scheming. And Hamor's going out to gain the girl for his son, right? And so Jacob's silence is puzzling. We know he's shrewd, we know he's strong, we know he's capable, but all of a sudden his daughter's defiled, but he holds his peace. It may be, I wonder what deal this guy wants to cut. Maybe he wants to make peace. Maybe this will be actually good for us. The defilement can't be undone. Let's make the best of it, right? So there's not compassion here. So Jacob may be thinking, even strategically, waiting for his sons, in fact, to return, right? But the sons of Jacob, they respond very differently. The sons of Jacob, verse 7, came in from the field, and when they heard it, and the men were vexed, and they were very incensed, because he had done a scurrilous deed, a navala, against Israel, not against Dinah. It's their honor that they're worrying about. How dare they do this to us? Right? In line with Jacob's daughter, such as ought not to be done. They shouldn't be doing things like that. They're united in their condemnation of it. And is it rape or is it a marriage? It can be viewed as a marriage or it can be viewed as a rape. And Jacob is open to it being a marriage. But the sons are viewing it as a rape. They don't want to see any marriage. And in fact, Jacob should know better, right? Because the word is, do not take a wife of the daughters of the Canaanites. Don't do it. It's better that Isaac should come back with no wife than to marry a Canaanite, right? So he waits for whatever the offer is, and the offer is what? Verse 11 through 12. And Shechem said unto her father and to the brethren, let me find grace in your eyes, and that which you say unto me I will give. Ask me however much bride price and gift, and I will give you whatever you say unto me, but give me the damsel to wife. Don't want any war. Dad's spoken to me. We don't want any trouble. I did this thing. I want to make it right. She'll be my wife. She'll be treated really well, right? Shechem is speaking to Dinah's father and brother, and he shows no remorse whatsoever, right? There's no remorse. I'm really sorry. That I shouldn't have done this. I repent. Nothing like that. He's a prince. Okay, let's make the best of it, right? No price is too high, right? I wish to possess her is what he's saying. I have this emotional feeling for her, and I wish to possess her. Maybe in 5 years I'll get tired of her, but right now, whatever you ask, I will give this, right? So morally and politically, Jacob's sons are in a tight spot here. What can they do? And they can't say, give her back, right? She's defiled. What would they do? They're going to choose revenge. So we cannot do this thing, 14 to 17, to give our sister to one that is uncircumcised. So they make a condition. Become like us, circumcised. For that would be a reproach unto us. Only on this condition will we consent unto you, if you will be as we are, not we as you are, but you as we are. Is that too much of a price? That every male of you shall be circumcised. Then we will give our daughters to you, and we will take your daughters to us, and we will dwell with you, and we will become one people. But if you will not hearken to us to be circumcised, then we will take our daughter, and we will be gone. They have no intention of going, right? It's simply a ploy. They are now free to exchange daughters. We'll be one people. You will gain from us. We're really good in business. We know how to make things prosper. And you will prosper because of it. And they go for it, right? They absolutely go for it. To become one people. God, by the way, is absent from all of the discussion. God isn't around here. All right? Circumcision is part of the strategy of revenge. So what happens when men beyond 8 days, when adult men are circumcised? There's great pain. That's what they're feeling, great pain. They're not ready for warfare. They're not ready probably even to eat food. They're simply in pain. The Shechemites submit to this, Hamor and Shechem are pleased with the proposal, and the young man deferred not to do this because he had delight in Jacob's daughter, and he was honored above all of the house of his father. Right? So these men are peaceable with us, therefore let them dwell in the land and trade with them. Behold, the land is large enough for them. Let us take their daughters to us for wives, and we'll give them our daughters. 34:21. So the appeal begins quietly. There's enough land here. We will get daughters. They will get daughters. We'll be one people. We'll all prosper. Every able-bodied man is going to be circumcised. Probably this means married and unmarried, right? So because there'll be one people. And unto Hamor, verse 24, and unto Shechem his son, they all hearkened. They went out of the gate of the city. They all were circumcised, all that went out of the gate of his city, right? So it means probably all is usually pejorative. It means the majority. It doesn't necessarily mean every single one. So what's going to happen? They do have superior numbers, but what will happen? And it came to pass, 25, 26, on the third day when they were in pain, two of the sons of Jacob, Simeon and Levi, Dinah's brothers, took each man his sword and came upon the city unnoticed and slew all the males, and they slew Hamor and Shechem his son with the edge of the sword, and took Dinah out of Shechem's house and went forth. What a great blessing they did to Dinah. What is Dinah going to do? Right? She's defiled. Okay, so they haven't done her a favor. They've just simply satisfied their own revenge. Right? They slew everybody. They messed up the whole deal, and nobody is feeling awe for God. Nobody is inquiring of God. And they say this, verse 30. Jacob says this, you have troubled me to make me odious unto the inhabitants of the land, even unto the Canaanites and the Perizzites, and I being few in number, they will gather themselves together against me and slay me, and I will be destroyed in my house. That's what he's worried about, okay? And their response is, shall one deal with our sister as one deals with a harlot? Is it better to live in peace and be defiled by these pagans? Right? They are not in agreement with their father. This is our sister. They could have said, this is your daughter. But they blame Jacob for not watching out for his daughter, and they call her our sister, as if we took care of this, which they should have taken care before. So what happens here? Jacob is troubled. They are sure that they did the correct thing, and that's what happens. Now, what happens with Judah, right? Dinah disappears, in a sense, from the scene. She's mentioned once in Genesis 46:15, but never again. She's kind of a lost soul. We don't really see anything. Jacob did not understand the need for educating on how to protect women. Right? This sin keeps cropping up again and again and again. And God said to Jacob in 35:1, arise, go up to Bethel, dwell there, get out of Shechem, get away from Shechem. God appeared unto you when you fled from Esau, your brother. You're feeling like you're going to be destroyed. Now you're feeling that way. You felt that way before with Esau. Go back to the place where I gave you the promise, right? God's silence on the revenge. Success is what? That the problem has been wrongly viewed, right? It's Israel's relationship to God. He's not expressing dissatisfaction of the actions of the sons. He's saying that your decision, Jacob, to dwell with the Canaanites is just like Lot. That's the real problem here. What they did was problematic, was evil. But the real sin lies with you, and now it's time for you to get away from Shechem. It's not just that it's a destroyed city. It's you should not arise, get up, and go. You never should have been there to begin with. And so I'm going to move forward here because I want to take a look at Judah, right? Judah. So Judah, we don't see Judah with his brethren anymore. Judah is now dwelling with a pagan, drinking, right? He's drinking, and he's partying with this pagan. I'm just going to summarize this because I want to get to Joseph. So Judah's not with his brothers anymore, okay? He's separated from his brethren, and it looks like the promise for Israel is in jeopardy. And so Jacob bears 3 sons, and Tamar becomes a widow. The sons die. The first son dies, the second son dies, and now he's reluctant to give the third son because he thinks there's a curse on this woman. Everybody who marries her dies, and I have this young son. You know, he's a little young, but when he grows up, I'll give him to you as a husband, which he never does, right? He never does. So what does Tamar do? She dresses up as a lady of the night, and Jacob sees her, and what happens? He gives her a signet ring and a staff as a pledge for the thing he's going to give her later on, an animal of great worth. And finally, it's discovered that Tamar is pregnant. And Jacob is incensed and wants to burn her like the pagans. And then Tamar shows him, Judah. And Tamar then shows him the signet ring and the staff. Sorry about that. Silence that. And Jacob realizes this is Tamar. I'm producing a child with Tamar. But Tamar shames Judah into his sin of separating from his brother. He's doing the same thing as his family did with regard to Dinah. You see the connection? If I'm away, I can't protect anybody. I haven't protected Tamar. I did not give Tamar my youngest son like I promised to raise up the seed of my other sons. I'm doing exactly the same thing as my father. And so in the next scene, after Tamar, Judah is back with his brethren. Do you understand? Judah had to learn that it is important to keep the family together so that the promise of the new way can be conveyed. And it was a hard lesson. He thought he could run away and party with this pagan, and he did. But he found out the price of separating yourself from the covenant and the new way and assimilating into paganism. Unprotected family. And the covenant gets lost. And the blessing gets lost. Judah comes back. And he's with his brethren. And now we pick up the story here of Joseph, which I'm kind of conflagrating a little bit. Joseph's 17 years old, and he's shepherding the flocks here with his brothers. And he was a lad to the sons of Bilhah and the sons of Zilpah, his father's wives. And Joseph brought an evil report of his brethren. He was a tattletale. Okay? Beautiful kid. And Israel loved Joseph more than all his sons because he was the son of his old age. And he made him an ornamented tunic, kitonet pasim. Now, what could be a kitonet pasim? if we take a look at 2 Samuel chapter 13, here's another Tamar, and she's wearing the same robes because she is a virgin princess. And so we have a hint in Scripture that this means headship. This means royalty of some kind. If we take a look at archaeology, we see some of the tombs in near about 12 miles from what's called Memphis, which is essentially Cairo, modern Cairo, the suburbs of Cairo. If we take a look at the ancient tombs at a place called Beni Hussein, we see these many-colored robes as signets of royalty. And so by Jacob making this many-colored garment, not only does he get a play out of it, Joseph in the Technicolor, okay, but he signifies that Joseph is going to be the head of the clan, okay, because he represents Rebekah, or doesn't he? Rebekah's side. He's reminded of Rebekah, right? And this is going to ignite the sons who are hotheads anyway, right? We already know that. They are hotheads. Look what they did, right? We already say this, and his brethren saw their father loved them more than all his brethren, and they hated him. And they could not speak shalom in peace. And Joseph dreamed a dream. Now, I've probably said it before, but, we forget things. Only pagans dream a dream. Nebuchadnezzar dreamed a dream. Pharaoh dreamed a dream. When a pagan dreams, the Hebrew text is very clear to say, and he dreamed a dream. When Israelites dream, the text says, chalam, he dreamt. Okay, it's a grammatical ploy to show you the difference between Israelite dreams and pagan dreams. And so by saying that Joseph dreamed a dream, we have a foreshadowing that Joseph is going to be a pagan.
Is there any indication that that's a different experience?
No, there's not. Just it's actually a grammatical ploy to differentiate. We have other ploys. He lifted up his eyes. Okay, there are many other ploys, little phraseologies and words that distinguish between the Israelites of promise and pagans, or Israelites who have a pagan mentality, right? So we have a foreshadowing in the grammar already. He dreamt, Vayachalom Yosef Chalom, and he dreamed a dream. And he told it to his brothers, and they hated him all the more. He's a tattletale, he's hated with his brothers, he's a dreamer, and then he's stupid enough to tell his dreams of superiority to his brothers. Like, doesn't he know? Has no clue, no social clue. Or he doesn't care because he thinks he's protected by his father. We don't know exactly, right? So, the man who libels his brother is seeking to advance himself in his father's regard. He tends the, he's a roa, he tends the sheep. I tend the sheep, I'm going to tend the family business, right? My father says I'm the son of his old age. Of course, Benjamin will be the same, but they represent Rachel, right? So the brothers are fit to be tied, and he's not so, wearing these multicolored garments, Joseph can be spotted afar off, right? And I'm sure that they have plenty of time. When Joseph draws near, they have plenty of time to scheme, plan, talk negatively about him, so forth and so on. So Joseph is a dreamer of dreams, but his interpretation is going to be unsound. Okay, he's going to end up fratricide is going to be an issue again. It always seems to be an issue. Brother killing brother, right? From Cain on. And so now, if there's a possibility here, Joseph does not stand out for his wisdom, but for his ambition. Joseph is ambitious, okay? And his father encourages it. So Joseph is here. He dreams a dream. And what is it? He said unto them, listen, please. This is verses 6 to 8. This is our parashah, chapters 37. 6 to 8. There is coffee if you want coffee. You can't have coffee because you're not here. If you were here, you could have coffee. Just a comment, social comment. And he said to them, listen, please, to this dream that I have dreamed. And behold, or look, we were binding sheaves in the midst of the field. And behold, my sheaf arose, and moreover stood upright. And behold, your sheaves gathered round and bowed down to my sheaf. And the brethren said unto him, shall you reign over us? Shall you indeed have dominion over us? And they increased, they Yosephed against Yosef. Okay? It's beautiful in the Hebrew. They Yosephed against Yosef. They increased their hatred against Joseph for his dreams and for his words, meaning and for telling them. They knew his ambition and they knew his audacity, right? So they heard it. They heard his words. But the imagery is not the imagery of Canaan. It's a subtlety. Sheaves are an imagery of another land. It's not an imagery of sheep and cattle. That'll come, but it's an imagery, isn't it, of fertile land, a distant land, specifically Egypt. Sheaves grow in Egypt. Egypt's agrarian. The Egyptians loathe those that keep sheep and cattle and so forth and so on. We'll see it in the text. It's beneath them, right? They are fishermen. They grow crops. In fact, that's how Egypt began. That's how Egypt grew so rapidly in the beginning, right? Was that the Fertile Crescent dumped this beautiful, rich, not the Fertile Crescent, the Nile. The Delta dumped this beautiful, rich soil that could grow anything. And so they had an overabundance of crops, and they could sell at very high or low prices and make a bundle. And Egypt became rich very quickly, right? And then the history is very interesting, but they were kind of like Greece, city-states, and then they were united, and the uniting of it was very interesting. The litany says that there were wars and that a certain king conquered, but really the archaeology shows that deals were made between leaders. And they were very good at making deals and cooperating. And it was just an amazing story, really, but they rose very quickly. My point is that the imagery here is not the imagery of Canaan. The imagery of the sheaves are the imagery of Egypt. If you read carefully, you know that's not going to happen here. Joseph has misread this. And the brothers have misread it because Joseph is portraying it as if it's now. Look, I have the coat. Okay? So the brethren are thinking, I wonder if this dream is, I wonder if he just made it up, the little liar. He lies about us to our father. He's a tattletale. We don't know what he's saying. We hear stories. Some's true, some's not true. He's a tattletale. He's a liar, right? Now, Joseph is going to grow too. He's not going to stay at this stage. All of them will grow, right? So we know what's going to happen, but let's say we don't, okay? And he dreamed yet another dream in verses 9 through 11. And he recounted it to his brethren. He said, look, I have dreamed yet another dream, and look, the sun and the moon and the 11 stars were bowing down to me. Again, this is not the imagery of Genesis. You know Genesis speaks against that type of thing of the stars and the moon and the sun being gods or goddesses, right? I've dreamed another dream. The sun and the moon and 11 stars, the 11 stars, the 11 brothers. This is all pagan imagery. Were bowing down to me, and he recounted it to his father and to his brethren. And his father rebuked him and said unto him, what is this dream that you have dreamed? Shall we indeed come? Why would he rebuke him for a dream that he had? Because he too is questioning, did he make it up? Or is this a function of his ambition even over us, his father and mother? There's a lot of questions here. What is this dream that you have dreamed? Shall we indeed come, I and your mother and your brethren, to bow before you to the ground? In other words, he's offended. As long as it's to the brothers, I don't care. But now he's including me. Right? And his brethren envied him, but his father kept the thing in his mind. Jacob shuts his mouth. He doesn't want to give any fuel to the fire. But he doesn't like it. So this time, what? First, Jacob said, right, something that was for public consumption, right? What was a public consumption? Shall we indeed bow down? But the second thing, he kept it in his mind. I wonder if, in fact, this will happen, because I want him to succeed. So privately, he questions the dream, or publicly he questions the dream, but privately he says, well, I want him to be the guy. You know, I don't know how this is going to happen. There's so much strife in my family. But he doesn't turn to God in it, right? The family is in danger of being divided. Joseph maybe has to conquer, right? Or Joseph has to be eliminated, and I'm sure in Jacob's mind, it's kind of like, which one's going to happen? And his brethren went down to graze. This is verses 12 to 14. There's so much in this parasha I couldn't possibly cover it all, but I'd love to. And his brethren went to graze their father's flock. Guess where? In Shechem. What does Shechem represent? It's a place of death. It's a place of destruction. It's a place of vengeance. It's perfect for the brothers, because it reminds them of Simeon and Levi and what they did. So you know this is not good. God told Jacob to get out of Shechem. Now they're going back to Shechem. And Israel said to Joseph, do not your brothers graze at Shechem? This is unbelievable for a father. Okay? Do not your brethren graze at Shechem? Come, let me send you to them. And he said to him, Hineni, here am I. And he said to them, go please to see whether it is well, whether it is shalom with your brethren, and shalom with the flock, and bring me back word. And he sent them into the valley of Hebron, and he sent them to Shechem. This is outrageous, because he knows the disposition of his other brothers. He knows what they did to the Shechemites. He knows what they're capable of. Yet he sends Jacob to that very place. And what could possibly be going on? See whether it's shalom in the brethren, shalom to the flock. See whether their anger has subsided to you. So, what if the anger's not subsided? Jacob, for the sake of the family, and I don't know how else to explain this, but for the sake of the family, Jacob is willing to send Joseph. Either Joseph will succeed in winning over his brother, or they will do him in. And Jacob is willing to endure that. I don't know how else to read this. To send Joseph to Shechem is to send him to a place of death and destruction. If you want to write in, if you have another explanation, I'm very happy to This is for the sake of the family, for the sake of unity. Maybe Joseph is smart enough to win over. He's very political. He's very ambitious. Maybe his words can win over his brethren. Or maybe they'll get rid of him. Whatever is going to happen, it'll be shalom in the end. It'll be shalom if they reconcile. It'll be shalom if Joseph is away. Okay? Either way. And a man found him. The meeting, by the way, at Shechem doesn't take place. It's a good thing. I'm not going to tell you who just walked in. But if you were here, you'd see. And a man found him. And behold, a man. He doesn't have a name. Do you remember another man? There was a man who wrestled with Jacob. And a man found him, and behold, he was wandering in the field. And the man asked him, saying, what do you seek? And he said, I seek my brethren. Please tell me, where are they grazing? And the man said, they are departed from here, for he heard them say, let us go to Dothan. And Jacob went after his brethren and found them at Dothan. We have a possible reprieve from death because Shechem is not going to be involved. Okay? Jacob is willing to send Joseph to Shechem, the place of death, the place of vengeance. But they've moved along, and a man has come along and, in a sense, blessed Joseph with his life and sent them to another place. Now, does that mean that the brethren had, in fact, departed? Does it mean that the brethren had departed at the same time? I choose the latter, right? Because clearly this is a pere. If you do fencing, you know what that is. To get Joseph to veer off, go someplace else. Okay? And there's some reason, some inspiration for the brethren to leave Shechem, right? That background of death, that background of scheming, that background where Joseph shall surely die like that. So for the time being, there's a reprieve. And they're going to go to Dothan. The man's just wandering in the field. What is he doing in the field? He's there to redirect Joseph. We suspect it's the same man, the same messenger that wrestled with Jacob. Yeah. Maybe. It could be. We're not told. We only know that they went back to and if you read between the lines, it really could be, right? But in gloating over that, they have slaying on their mind. They have death on their mind. So they've been redirected. Verses 18 to 20. And they saw him from afar. How could they see him that far? How could they know it was him? By the coat of many colors. Right? So so the coat now serves a negative thing. And they saw him from afar, and even when he came near to them, they plotted against him to kill him. And they said, each to his brother, behold, the master of dreams, he comes. They're saying this sarcastically. They don't really believe that he got anything prophetic. They think he made it up. Okay? The dreamer of dreams. So now let us slay him and fling him into one of the pits, and we can say an evil that is a vicious beast, which they would be correct. They would be very correct. A vicious beast has devoured him, and we shall see what will become of his dreams. We will stop his dreams. Now, Reuben has been disgraced, right? Reuben has been disgraced. Judah is back with his brothers. Reuben is going to, what is he going to think? I've been disgraced. If I spare Joseph, maybe I can what? Regain my position, which can never happen. He's a fool for thinking it. But he wants to spare Joseph for the sake of regaining his place as the firstborn. And Reuben heard, verses 21 to 24, and he delivered him from their hand, and he said, let us not take his life. And Reuben said to them, shed no blood, fling him to the pit that is in the wilderness, lay no hand upon him, that he might deliver him out of their hand and restore him to his father. And it happened when Joseph came into his brethren that they stripped him of his tunic. Right? It served a twofold purpose. See what you can dream now, dreamer. See how you're going to lord over us now. Right? And second of all, they're going to do something with the tunic that will shift the blame on somebody else. All right? The ornamental tunic that was on him. And they took him and they flung them into a pit, and the pit was empty and there was no water in it. It was dry. For all intents and purposes, he's going to die. Right? So, let us not take his life. And what do? They throw him into a pit. There's no water. There's nothing there. And they sat down to eat bread. They had lunch. No remorse, no conscience, no nothing. And they lifted up their eyes and looked, and behold, a caravan. Oh my gosh, where do the Ishmaelites come from? From Ishmael. Ishmael is used to save Joseph. Not Ishmael per se, but the Ishmaelites are used, and they're used several times, right? So Ishmael's seed is used several times, even though they're antagonists for most of the time. Several key points to bless Israel. And they sat down to eat bread, and they lifted up their eyes, and they looked, and behold, a caravan of Ishmaelites was coming from Gilead, and their camels were bearing spices and balm, and laudanum, and they were going to carry it down to Egypt. And Judah speaks up. Okay? Judah is back with his brethren. After going through the Tamar thing, he's back with his brethren. He's listened to all these words. And Judah said unto his brethren, what profit is it if we slay our brother? Does Judah need the money? No. But he appeals to what he knows his brethren were all about, and conceal his blood. Come, let us sell him to the Ishmaelites, and our hand will not be upon him, for he is our brother and our flesh. Okay, now he says something. This is our brother. He's family. Why should we slay our family? And his brethren hearkened to them. So the Ishmaelite traders are an alternative, and Egypt is the savior of Joseph, as it will be for the Jewish people in the famine. Okay? As Babylon will be in a time of crisis. Babylon actually preserved the integrity of the Jewish people. Right? So even in captivity, God takes the captivity to provide for Israel's integrity, so they're not scattered to the nations. Right? So here's the Ishmaelites. They're going to get money for them, and they're passed by Midianites, merchantmen, and they saw a prophet. And they got there before the Ishmaelites. And by the way, the brethren were having lunch. And they were nowhere near. And passed by the Midianites, merchantmen, and they drew Joseph out of the pit, and they sold Joseph before the brothers could make the profit. They made the profit to the Ishmaelites for 20 pieces of silver, and they brought Joseph to Egypt. Before they could extract Joseph, it was gone. So they have to now make up a story. The old story is still good. Right? The old story, we don't know what happened to him. Left to himself, he would have died. So they took Joseph's tunic, they killed a kid, verses 31 to 32, and dipped the tunic in blood, and sent the ornamental tunic and had it brought to their father, and said, we have found this. Recognize, please, this is your son's tunic, is it not? And then, of course, Jacob, notice what Jacob says. It is my son's tunic, a vicious beast. Right? The very words. A vicious beast has torn is Joseph. Chaya ra'ah. Tarof Yosef. Joseph is torn. Okay? So he says, listen, he mourned many days. All his sons, all his daughters rose up to comfort him, but he refused to be comforted. He says, I will go down to my son in mourning to Sheol. And his father wept. And that was the end of the story. All right. So, is this your son's tunic? Where is Abel, your brother? Am I my brother's keeper? Is this your son's tunic? Why is he going to mourn? Because he's the one that sent him to Shechem. Jacob was the one that sent Joseph to Shechem. We'll end the story there because we've got to set up for the service. Yes? Yes. Because he says the 11 stars. Right? All right, so we're going to continue with this, and I'll do some flashbacking for the new parashah because the beginning of the Joseph story becomes important as well. Okay? So God, thank you for your word. Thank you for the richness of it. Thank you for the fact that these people are not left to remain in the state that they are, but we will see them grow. We will see them mature, both familially and spiritually, Lord. Thank you for that in Yeshua's name. See you next time. Thank you for your support and your blessing us in all ways. Shalom. If you want to come, we're at the missions for the military on Shell Road, and it's right off of Diamond Springs in Virginia Beach, just before you get to Northampton Boulevard, very near the corner of Diamond Springs and Northampton Boulevard.